Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Hope, the Assistant Director of Music at Gloucester Cathedral, and this is the third in our trilogy of Meet the Music Department staff, and we are delighted to have our organ scholar Mary Pan with us. Mary's been our organ scholar, well, the one organ scholar so far who's done 2 years, and because of the pandemic we had to tweak our plans a year ago, and Mary stayed on an extra year, which has been brilliant, and Mary is unfortunately leaving us in the summer to go back to America, but I suspect she'll say more on that in a sec. But basically this is our chance to say thank you to Mary for all her wonderful playing and choir training and everything else she does here since she's been here, and a chance for you to find out a little bit about her. So Mary, welcome, and give us a little run through of your life today, because it's been an interesting one simply because you're not from here.
Yes, yeah, I think that it is quite interesting and quite unusual. So I grew up in the US, in Connecticut, and I didn't have a lot of exposure to the organ at all. I went to a church that didn't really have organ playing or necessarily organ and choral music happening at all. I did start the piano when I was very young, and also did join various pretty relaxed children's choirs as well. But I really was not at all aware of the organ as an instrument, so I just didn't know that it was a wind instrument or even how it worked. I think I have memories of seeing a gigantic what looked like a gigantic piano to me, which actually was kind of scary, and I had no idea what it was for or how someone would actually play it. And then when I was about 10, funnily enough, when I was in China, of all places, I actually heard some family friends who were in their 90s playing their home electronic organ, and it was really in bad shape. I'm pretty sure it didn't sound that good. Because apparently it had been taken away forcibly during the revolution and then had been returned again. So you can imagine that it wasn't in a great condition, but I was really fascinated by that, and I really wanted to hear more of it. But strangely enough, back in the States, I really had no exposure, which is funny because in Connecticut there actually are organs quite often in quite a few churches, but I just didn't get to hear it. And then fast forward to when I was 16, I happened to go to the high school graduating organ recital of one of my sister's friends. And I still remember it was Pentecost, and we just went there, and I think it was Virgil Fox's arrangement of Bach's Nundanket. And it was played on this weird hybrid with some stops, but some electronic stops, and it's not really that great of an organ in hindsight, but at the time I just thought this is the most amazing sound I've ever heard. I really need to go and learn this instrument. So that was when I had sort of been begging my parents to let me go to organ things. So I had heard a little bit and listened to a few recordings, but that was when I think I really heard the organ in performance, and when I really started pressuring my parents to let me start taking lessons. So when I was almost 17, I took my first organ lesson.
And was that at school, or was it
that was just a private teacher that my piano teacher had put me in touch with.
So you started the organ, and you completed school, and then you presumably went off to university somewhere?
Yes, so at university, I went to a place where there was an organ department. I was majoring in health science, so I did degrees in science and then also in music, because I was able to take organ lessons as part of an organ degree, which was kind of a no-brainer for me. So I was doing the two at the same time, and so there wasn't a whole lot of time to do musical things, and in hindsight I think I definitely didn't do as much as an ordinary music major would have done, just because I'm one person rather than two. But it was still really good because I was able to continue doing something that I had just started.
Yeah, that seems like the perfect situation for you. So you did that, and you held a couple of organ scholarships over in America, didn't you, as well? Was the one the ones before you came here was in Chicago, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So I think that I really sort of knew the organ as a performing instrument at first, and I was not aware of the Anglican choral world until a few years later. So probably when I was almost done with university. And up to that point, I'd been working at a Baptist church where I was really just playing hymns and voluntaries for the services. And after going to a few of the organized conventions, I realized that there was this thing called evensong, which I absolutely loved. I just loved the choral music that had been written for it, and also the way that people were singing hymns, which I think is really distinct. It is quite different in that tradition. And so after university, I went to Yale for 2 years for the master's, and that was when, for the first year, I volunteered as an organ scholar in an Episcopal church for the first time. And then after that, I was in New York. And that was the first time when I started to actually play accompaniments like Rejoice in the Lamb and Chichester Psalm.
All the biggies.
Yeah.
Was that Grace Church?
Grace Church in
New York City?
Yes. Yeah. So that was sort of the first experience, the first baptism by fire was at Grace Church, and then I spent 2 years in Chicago, and I was basically doing all the accompaniments, which was nothing compared to what we do here, of course, because it's pretty much just a Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon type of thing, and then also a Wednesday evening song. But that was great because I had a lot of attention from, a lot of help from the director of music who listened to my accompaniments and gave me a lot of feedback, and I think set me up really well for coming here.
Which we were delighted when you did, and it was. What would you say is the main difference between the way Anglican church music is run over here and how it's run over the other side of the pond? What would you say?
Yeah, I think that there isn't I think the biggest difference is the daily rhythm of services that occur here, and I think people learn music by doing day after day. So people showing up every morning to rehearse and every afternoon to sing a service. And there isn't so much time to prepare necessarily for a given piece of music, for a given rendition. In the States we do, so in Chicago we were doing a monthly evensong actually, not even every week. I should have clarified that. So it was really just once a month that we did a significant evensong, and each of these were pretty significant. So we, someone was saying, this is actually not how evensong is meant to be, because evensong is supposed to be sort of a 45-minute type of thing, but we turn it into evensong with sermon, and it lasts for more than an hour. And so we do spend a lot of time preparing, and that's good. But then we just don't have that daily rhythm.
Yeah, I think over here it's a little bit when you first come over here, or even if you're from England and you're playing in your first organ scholarship, I think it is very much a sink or swim thing, and I think it's fair to say that you have swum, which is great. Why don't you talk us through a typical day in the life of the cathedral organ scholar here? It's similar to my job, and it's similar to Adrian's job in layout, but there are things that we do that you don't, and things that you do that we don't necessarily do. So what's your typical schedule for an average weekday?
Yeah, so I guess I'm speaking for myself, not necessarily for all organ scholars, but I usually try to get up in the morning and do some practice beforehand, just because that's sort of my claim to the organ. And then morning rehearsal at about 8 o'clock. And then after that, there's a lot of freedom, as is the case for you guys. I usually try to sort of, depending on the day, we'll get some office work done and practice. So if I'm preparing for an exam, a Royal College of Organists exam, then I would also try to get some of that out of the way in the middle of the day. And then I think one thing that the two of you don't do so much, well actually you do some of that too, is the outreach programs. So I have gone with Mia, who is the director of the girl choristers, and also in charge of some of these outreach opportunities. And she and I would drive out to schools and work on singing with mostly primary school children. And that was really eye-opening, I think. So that would be what we would do in the middle of the day. And then we would come back in time for evensong and all the rest.
Yeah, and then do the whole thing the next day. This is the thing. Now, so to close, basically it's a bit of a Desert Island Discs moment, really. I'm going to ask you to name two pieces, one sacred choral piece and one of anything you want, so a concert piece that's you're particularly fond of. So what would be your favourite piece of choral music that you think people should go away and listen to?
I think for
Tricky
the
question.
sacred choral work, I mean, obviously there are just so many pieces, but I will go with John Ireland's Greater Love, Happy No Man.
Good
Because
choice.
I think it's beautiful, but it's simple, and it's doable by many different types of choirs. You don't have to be expert to sing it well, and yeah, it just has a lot of personal meaning for me because back when I was 17, so before I really knew what evensong was, I have memories of being at an organ camp, and this was outside Boston at the Groton School, and we were sort of having a session on Anglican choral music accompaniment. Before, I didn't really know what it was at the time, but yeah, we were sort of walked through that anthem and we sang through it as well.
It's one of those pieces that once you accompany that, you know basically know how to accompany.
Yeah.
It's one of those pieces. And what would be your other piece? You know, it doesn't have to be classical, it could be anything you want. It could be, heavy metal or jazz or something, But what would be your other favourite?
Well, I really like Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto. I haven't played it myself, but yeah, I just have moments of just absolute enjoyment, utter absolute enjoyment of hearing it in concert, played by the local orchestra, and then also my younger sister has played it with orchestra as well, and I also accompanied her playing the orchestra part.
You need very big hands.
Yeah, yes, and trying to play very loudly too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary, and those of you watching, Mary will be with us for the last few weeks of term and staying for the Three Choirs Festival at Worcester. And then in August we will bid her farewell and send her back across the waves back to the US. So I'm sure all of you watching would like to join me in thanking Mary for all her hard work over the last 2 years and all her wonderful playing, and her directorship of the middle choir as well, which is starting to thrive quite nicely. So thank you, Mary, for everything you've done, and we wish you all the best in the future.
You're very welcome.